Mochan Hanuman Temple, and those joining us from different regions around the Bay Area, around the country, perhaps around the globe. So first of all, we're very grateful to begin to have our slow relaunch and reopening and having people come and be with us here for darshan and this beautiful reading of Ramayana that we're doing every Saturday at this time, and the following oddity and time together for prayer and singing, honoring, and darshan, of course. So we just asked during the reading especially that we really be attentive to being very quiet on site so that everyone who would like can hear the reading easily. And that really it's like a meditative group we come together to do, to explore this story, Tulsidas Ramcharitamanas, that's talking about our own inner journey of awakening. So this is very much about us and our own struggle in life toward liberation, self-realization. So we try to bring that spirit to it, and it's very important. We do this also here under the gaze of Lord Hanuman, as wherever the Ramayana is sung, told, taught, acted, Hanumanji is there. So we thank you for joining us for it then. So Bhavani will be reading tonight, and this is the 19th reading in our series of the Ramayana. So, and Bhavani's got many, many years, decades of history of studying Ramayana, along with those of us here in the satsang with Guru Baba Haridas. So she's great at this, and you'll enjoy her. Oh.
Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayit Sarvavighnopashantaye Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada. So we're in the part of the Ramayana where Queen Kaikeyi has just asked of King Dasharath for the fulfillment of her two boons. He had promised these two boons to her on the battlefield when she saved his life many years earlier, and now she asked for them after being manipulated in her mind and her heart by her maidservant, Manthara. She asked in the first boon that her son Bharat be crowned king regent, heir apparent to the throne, instead of Sri Ram, as had been planned. And the second of the boons was to ask that Sri Ram be banished to the forest, to the jungle, for 14 years, so as not to threaten her own son's rule. On hearing these poignant words, the king exclaimed, "Say what you will. You are not to blame for it. It is my doom which has possessed you like a devil and is using you as its mouthpiece." Bharat would never covet sovereignty, even unwittingly. By the decree of fate, however, evil counsel has taken possession of your mind. All that is the outcome of my sins, due to which the tide has turned against me. At this inopportune moment, beautiful Ayodhya shall flourish again under the sovereignty of Ram, the abode of all virtues. All his brothers shall serve him, and his fame shall spread through all the three spheres of creation. The stain on your reputation and my remorse shall not disappear even after our death, and shall never go till eternity. Now do whatever pleases you, only keep out of my sight, hiding your face. So long as I live, I beseech you with joined palms, Pray speak not a word to me again. You will repent in the end, O hapless woman, that you killed a cow for the sake of its guts. Thus arguing with her in numberless ways, the king dropped on the ground crying, "Why do you thus bring ruin to us all?" But a past master in wiles, the queen did not utter a word, as though to acquire control over ghosts. Stricken with grief, the king repeated the word Ram, Ram, again and again, and felt miserable like a bird that has been shorn of its wings. He prayed in his heart, "May the day never dawn, nor may anyone go and tell Ram, 'Rise not, O son, the progenitor of Raghu's race, for you will be pained at heart to see the plight of Ayodhya.'" The king's affection and the relentlessness of Kaikeyi both were the highest of their kind in God's creation. While the king was yet wailing, the day broke, and the music of lute, flute, and conch was heard at his door. Bards extolled him, and minstrels sang his praises. They, however, pierced the king like shafts as he heard them. These and other tokens of rejoicing pleased him not. None could have a wink of sleep that night, since everyone was eagerly longing for a sight of Sri Ram. At the door waited a crowd of servants and ministers who said to one another at the sight of the risen sun, "The Lord of Ayodhya has not woken up. What special reason can there be?" The king used to wake up during the last watch of the night every day. His behavior today appears most strange to us. Getting into the palace, Sumantra, you go and rouse him. On receiving his orders, we may proceed with our work. Sumantra then entered the gymnasium, but it wore such a dismal appearance that he was afraid to advance. It looked like a monster that would spring on him and devour him. Its sight was so repelling. It seemed to be the very abode of calamity and sorrow. Since nobody answered his questions, he proceeded to the apartment where the king and Queen Kaikeyi were. Greeting the king with the salutary words, "Jaya Jivan," and bowing his head, he sat down. He turned pale to behold the condition of the king, who lay on the ground distracted with grief and colorless like a lotus stalk torn from its roots. The minister, being too alarmed to ask any question, Kaikeyi, who was full of evil and void of all good, broke the silence. The king had no sleep last night. Heaven alone knows the reason. He has simply been repeating Ram, Ram till daybreak and refuses to disclose the secret. Therefore call on Ram and bring him soon. Thereafter, when you have come back, you may ask further details. Judging from his master's looks that the king approved of this idea, Sumantra left. He concluded that the queen had contrived some evil design. He felt so distressed with anxiety that his legs refused to move ahead. What will the king speak to Ram after calling him? He wondered. Recovering himself, he repaired to the gate, and seeing him disconsolate, all began to question him. He, however, reassured them all and proceeded to the apartment where the ornament of the solar race, Sri Ram, was. When Sri Ram saw Sumantra coming, he received him with honor, treating the minister on an equal footing with his own father. Looking Sri Ram in the face, Sumantra conveyed to him the royal command and returned with the light of Raghu's race. Sri Ram followed the minister in an unbecoming manner. People here and there were grieved to see this. The jewel of Raghu's race went and saw the king in an utterly wretched state, like an aged elephant who had dropped down in terror at the sight of a lioness. His lips got parched and his whole frame burned. He looked like a helpless snake, bereft of the gem. The Lord beheld by the side of his father, angry Kaikeyi, who stood there like death personified, counting the last minutes of his life. Sri Ram was compassionate and soft by nature. He witnessed sorrow for the first time in his life. He had never heard of it before, yet recovering himself as the occasion demanded, addressed his stepmother in the following sweet words. Tell me, dear mother, the cause of my father's distress, so that an attempt may be made to remove it. Listen, Ram, the sole cause is this. The king is very fond of you. He has promised me 2 boons of my choice, and I asked whatever I liked. The king, however, was stricken with grief to hear my requests, for he cannot shake off the hesitation on your score. Love for his son on one side and his plighted word on the other, the king is placed on the horns of a dilemma. Only his command, if you can, obey his command, if you can, and rid him of this severe mental torture. Kaikeyi unhesitatingly spoke these pungent words, which callousness itself was sore distressed to hear. With the tongue for a bow and words for so many shafts, and with the king for a delicate target as it were, it looked as hard-heartedness had assumed the form of a great hero and practiced bowmanship. Having communicated the whole incident to the Lord of Raghus, Sri Ram, she sat like the very incarnation of heartlessness. The son of the solar dynasty, Sri Ram, the natural fountain of joy, smiled within himself and spoke words which were free of all blemish, sweet and agreeable, so that they seemed to be the very ornaments of speech. Listen, mother, that son alone is blessed who is devoted to the words of his parents. A son who gratifies his father and mother is rare in this whole world, mother. In the forest, I shall get more opportunities of meeting hermits, which will be beneficial to me in every way. On top of it, I have my father's command and your approval to boot, mother. Again, Bharat, who is as dear to me as life, will get the sovereignty. God is propitious to me in every way, in every respect today. If I refuse to proceed to the woods, even under such circumstances, I should be reckoned foremost in an assembly of fools. Those who nurture a castor oil plant, leaving the tree of paradise, and barter away nectar for poison, they too will not lose an opportunity like this, should they ever get it. Ponder this fact in your mind and realize it, mother. Only one thing pains me most. I am grieved to see the king sore distressed. That my father should be so overwhelmed with grief over a trifling matter is more than I can believe, dear mother. The king is stout of heart and a fathomless ocean of goodness. I must have committed some great offense which prevents the king from speaking out his mind to me. Therefore, I adjure you to tell me the truth. The words of Sri Ram were artless and straightforward, yet the evil-minded Kaikeyi took them to be otherwise. A leech must always move obliquely, even though the water on which it moves has a smooth surface. The queen rejoiced to find Sri Ram acquiescing to her proposal and said with a false show of affection, I swear by yourself and Bharat that no other cause of the king's affliction is known to me. You are not supposed to do any offense, dear son. A source of delight that you are to your parents and brothers. What you say is all true. You are devoted to the words of your father and mother. I adjure you to argue with your father, that he may not incur opprobrium in the evening of his life. It is hardly desirable for him to disregard the virtues, truthfulness, and so on, that have fetched him a son like you. All these words from his stepmother sounded pleasant to Ram, in the same way as waters of all kinds are hallowed through their confluence with the holy Ganga. The king's spell of unconsciousness now left him. He remembered Ram and then changed sides, and the minister Sumantra informed him of Sri Ram's arrival and made humble submission to him in words appropriate to the occasion. Hearing that Sri Ram had come, the king recovered himself and opened his eyes. The minister Sumantra helped his sovereign to a sitting posture. When the latter beheld Ram falling at his feet, overwhelmed with emotion, the king clasped him to his bosom as though a serpent had regained its lost gem. The monarch kept gazing on Sri Ram, and a torrent of tears streamed forth from his eyes. Overpowered with grief, he could not utter a word and pressed the prince to his heart again. He inwardly prayed to God that the Lord of Raghus might not be able to proceed to the woods. Invoking the mighty Lord Shiv, he solicited him, saying, "Hear my prayer, O ever blissful Lord. Quickly pleased and indiscreetly generous as you are, pray relieve my affliction, knowing me to be in distress. Dwelling as you do in the heart of all, as the prompter of actions, so inspire Ram that he may flout my word and stay at home, casting to the wind all sense of propriety and filial affection. Let worldwide disrepute be my lot, and let my good name perish. I would fain be damned to perdition and forego heaven, the abode of immortals. Subject me to all severe hardships, but let not Ram be screened from my view." The king thus prayed within his heart, but did not open his lips. His mind quivered like an aspen leaf. Perceiving that his father was overpowered with affection, and apprehending that Mother Kaikeyi might utter something again, the Lord of Raghus spoke, after due deliberation, words which were not only humble, but also suited to this place, time, and circumstance. "Dear Father, I make bold to submit something. Pray forgive this impropriety on my part, knowing that I am yet tender of age. You have suffered for a most trifling matter. And the pity of it is that nobody apprised me of it before. When I saw you, I asked Mother Kaikeyi and was consoled to hear what she has told me. Grieve not out of affection at a time of rejoicing, dear Father, and command me with a glad heart." The Lord felt a thrill of joy all over his body as he spoke these words. Blessed is his birth on the surface of this earth, whose Father is rejoiced to hear of his doings. He has in his hand all the four prizes of life: dharma, religious merit; artha, material prosperity; kama, sensuous gratification; and moksha, final beatitude. He has all these to whom his parents are as dear as life. After carrying out your order and having obtained the reward of my life, I shall come back soon. Therefore, be pleased to command me. In the meantime, I shall ask leave of Mother Koshalya and return forthwith. Then I shall proceed to the woods after throwing myself once more at your feet. So spoke Sri Ram, and then departed, while the king was too overpowered with grief to make any answer. This most unwelcome news spread throughout the city as though the sting of a scorpion had circulated its poison throughout the body. Every man and woman who heard this was distressed, even as trees and creepers are blasted at the very sight of a forest fire. Whoever heard it beat their head wherever they happened to be. The grief was too great to be borne. Their mouths were parched, their eyes streamed, and their heart could not contain their sorrow. It seemed as though the army of suffering had openly pitched its camp at Ayodhya. When everything was ready, God upset the whole plan. Everywhere people abused Kaikeyi. What sense could there be in this wicked woman having set fire to a house that has been newly thatched? She seeks to perceive after tearing out her own eyes with her own hands, and wishes to taste poison, throwing away nectar. This crooked, hard-hearted, and evil-minded wretch has appeared as fire to burn the cluster of bamboo in the shape of Raghu's race. Sitting on a twig, she has hewn the tree itself. In the midst of joy, she has raised a structure of sorrow. Sri Ram has always been dear to her as life. What has led her to resort to such perversity? What is there that fire cannot consume? What is there that cannot be engulfed by the ocean? What is there that a powerful woman, miscalled powerless, cannot accomplish? And what creature is there in this perishable world that death cannot devour? Having first ordained one thing, the Creator has now ordained quite the reverse of it. Having shown us one spectacle, he would now show us quite another. Some people said, the king has not done well. He has not been discreet in granting the wicked woman her request, whereby he has willfully courted all this tragedy. By allowing himself to be ruled like this, he has lost his wisdom and goodness, as it were. Others did not blame the king, recognizing, as they did, his high standard of morality. They repeated at length to one another the narratives of Shibi, Dadhichi, and Harishchandra. Some suggested Bharat's connivance, while others still passively heard what their companions said. Others stopped their ears with their hands and bit their tongue as they exclaimed, "This must be untrue. All your merits will be destroyed as you utter these words. Sri Ram is dear to Bharat as his own life. Sooner shall the moon rain sparks of fire or nectar have the same effect as poison than Bharat ever dream of doing anything prejudicial to the interests of Sri Ram." Some blamed the Creator, who had offered nectar but actually given them poison. The whole city was astir, and everyone felt distressed. There was deep agony in their heart, and their briskness was gone. Brahmana matrons and other venerable and elderly ladies of the royal family, and such other ladies as were most dear to Kaikeyi, began to expostulate with her, praising her amiability, but their words pierced her like shafts. "You have always said, and the whole world knows it, that Bharat is not so dear to you as Ram. You have borne natural affection towards Ram. For what offense do you exile him to the woods today? You have never harbored jealousy toward your co-wives. Your loving disposition and credulity are known throughout the land. What wrong has Kaushalya done to you? now due to which you should have hurled this thunderbolt against the whole city? Will Sita forego the company of Sri Ram, or Lakshman choose to stay at home? Will Bharat ever enjoy the sovereignty of the king, or the king survive without Ram? Pondering thus, banish anger from your breast, nor make yourself a storehouse of grief and infamy. By all means, install Bharat as the prince regent. But what need is there for exiling Ram to the forest? Ram is not covetous of sovereignty. He is a champion of righteousness and has no relish for sensual pleasures. Let Ram abandon his home and live with his preceptor. Ask this of the king as your second boon. In case you do not follow our advice, you will gain nothing. If you have only played some joke, let us know by openly declaring it. Does a son like Ram deserve to be exiled to the woods? What will the world say about you when they hear of it? Up quickly and devise some means to avert grief and obloquy. Devise some means to avert grief and infamy and save your family. Forcibly dissuade Ram from proceeding to the woods and make no other suggestion. As the day without the sun, as the body without life, and as the night without the moon, so the city of Ayodhya without the Lord of Tulsidas, Sri Ram. Just consider this, O irascible lady. The advice that Kaikeyi's friends gave her was agreeable to hear and salutary in consequence, but she gave no ear to it, tutored as she was by the mischievous humpback. She gave no reply and wore a sullen look due to anger that could not be easily curbed. She stared at them as a hungry tigress would gaze on a herd of does. Finding her disease incurable, her friends left her, saying as they went, "Wretched fool! Fate could not brook her sovereignty and has betrayed her. She has done what nobody else would do." Men and women of the city thus lamented and showered numberless abuses on the wicked woman. They burned with terrible agony and sighed, "There can be no hope of life without Ram." The people were disconcerted at the thought of long separation, even as aquatic creatures get disturbed when water in which they live begins to dry. Men and women alike were overcome with excessive grief. In the meantime, Lord Sri Ram called on his mother, Kaushalya. He wore a cheerful look and had fourfold joy in his heart. He no longer feared lest the king should detain him. The mind of Sri Ram, the hero of Raghu's race, resembled a young elephant newly caught with kingship for its chain. When he heard of the proposal for exiling him to the forest, he took himself as freed and felt overjoyed in his heart. The crown of Raghu's race, Sri Ram, joined both his palms and cheerfully bowed his head at his mother's feet. She blessed him and clasped him to her bosom and scattered jewels and raiment around him in order to protect him from evil. The mother kissed him again and again with tears of affection in her eyes and her limbs thrilling over with joy. Seating him in her lap, she pressed him once more to her heart while milk flowed from her graceful breasts due to excess of love. Her affection and joy were altogether beyond description. It seemed as if a pauper had attained the position of Kuber, the god of riches. Fondly regarding his lovely countenance, the mother spoke to him in endearing terms. "Tell me, dear child, I beseech you, when will be that delightful and auspicious hour, the beautiful culmination of piety, virtue, and joy, and the highest reward of human birth? and for which all men and women long as anxiously as a thirsty pair of chatak birds for an autumnal shower during the brief period when the sun is in the same longitude as the constellation named Swati. I adjure you, my darling, to bathe quickly and take some sweet dish of your choice. See your father after that, my boy, for I protest it is already too late. Even on hearing these most agreeable words of his mother, which were blossoms, as it were, of the celestial tree of affection, laden with the honey of joy and fountains of worldly prosperity, the bee of Sri Rama's mind could not be lured by their charm. A champion of righteousness that he was, he clearly discerned the path of duty and spoke to his mother in exceedingly polite terms. Father has bestowed on me the kingdom of the forest, where there will be great opportunities for me in every way. Therefore grant me leave with a cheerful heart, so that my journey to the forest may be attended with joy and blessing. Be not obsessed with erroneous fears due to affection, dear mother. By your good will, I shall be ever happy. Spending 4 years and 10 in the forest, and having obeyed Father's commands, I will come back and behold your feet again. Be not sad at heart. The gentle and sweet words of Sri Ram pierced the mother's heart and rankled there. Alarmed to hear his serene speech, she turned pale in the same way as the Yavasaka plant is blasted by a shower in the monsoon. The agony of her heart was beyond description, like that of a doe that has heard a lion's roar. Her eyes were wet with tears, and her body violently shook like a fish that had got inebriated by sucking the scum raised by the first monsoon shower. Recovering herself and looking her son in the face, the mother spoke in faltering accents. My boy, you are as dear as life to your father, to whom it is a constant delight to watch your day-to-day doings. He has got an auspicious day fixed for installing you as the Prince Regent. For what offense has he asked you to proceed to the woods? Let me know the reason, my darling. Who is it that has served as fire to consume the solar race? Reading in Sri Ram's eyes his tacit consent, Sumantra's son, who had accompanied the prince, explained the reason. The mother was struck dumb, as it were, to hear this episode. The state of her mind could not be described in words. She could neither detain her son nor yet say, go. She felt terrible agony in her heart in either event. It seemed as though one was going to write moon and wrote Rahu, the demon who is believed to devour the moon during a lunar eclipse. Instead, through a slip of the pen, she said to herself, the ways of the Creator Brahma are always adverse to all, she concluded. Kaushalya's judgment was swayed on the one hand by her sense of duty, and on the other by her affection. She found herself on the horns of a dilemma like a snake that has caught hold of a muskrat. If I press my son and detain him, the moral code will be violated and bad blood created between the brothers. And if I allow him to proceed to the woods, it will be a grievous loss. The queen thus found herself faced with a situation agonizing and overwhelming, and she was overwhelmed with grief. Again, realizing the duty that she had and remembering that both Ram and Bharat were equally her sons, the prudent Kaushalya, Sri Ram's mother, who had a guileless disposition, spoke as follows with great courage. You have done well, my child. I swear, a father's command is the most sacred of all obligations. That having promised to bestow on you the kingdom of Ayodhya, your father has now decided to exile you to the woods does not make me the least sorry. But your absence from our midst will mean a terrible ordeal to Bharat, to the king himself, to me, and to the people. In any case, if it be your father's command alone, my boy, then go not, remembering that a mother ranks higher than one's father. If, on the other hand, both father and mother have asked you to proceed to the woods, then of course the forest will equal 100 cities like Ayodhya, with the sylvan gods for your father, the sylvan goddesses for your mother, and the birds and beasts to wait upon your lotus feet. At all events, it is but proper for a king to dwell in a forest in the evening of his life. It is your tender age which fills my heart with agony. How blessed is the forest, and how luckless Ayodhya, that it will be deserted by you, O crown of Raghu's line. If I ask you, my boy, to take me with you, your mind will be filled with doubt. You are supremely dear to all, my child. You are the life of our life, the vitality of our soul. As such, you say, Mother, I go to the forest, while I remain rooted to my seat, even on hearing these words, and repent. Realizing this, I do not press my suit, exaggerating false love. I only pray that, remembering me as a mother, you should not allow me to slip out of your mind. May all the gods and manes protect you, O Lord of the earth, as the eyelids protect the eyes. The term of exile is like water, while your near and dear ones resemble the fish that live in it. As for yourself, you are a fountain of mercy and a champion of virtue. Remembering this, please devise some means to see that you come back in time to find them all alive. I adjure you to proceed to the woods in good cheer, abandoning your servants, family, and the whole city. The fruit of everyone's meritorious deeds is exhausted today, and the tide of fortune has turned against us, assuming a sullen aspect. Thus wailing in many ways, Mother Kaushalya clung to Sri Ram's feet, accounting herself the most unlucky of women. Her heart was filled with terrible and deep agony, and the profusion of wailings was beyond all description. Sri Ram lifted his mother and pressed her to his bosom, and then comforted her with soothing words. That very moment, Sita heard the news and rose in great agitation. She approached her mother-in-law, reverenced her lotus feet, and sat down, bowing her head. The mother-in-law blessed her in gentle accents and felt distressed when she regarded her most delicate frame. With her head bent low, Sita, who was beauty personified and cherished unalloyed love toward her Lord, sat reflecting. The Lord of my life would depart to the forest. It has yet to be seen who will have the good fortune to accompany him, my body and soul together, or my soul alone. What God intends to do cannot be foreseen, even partly. As she scratched the ground with the lovely nails of her toes, her anklets produced a musical sound, as if, so declare the poets, They lovingly prayed that Sita's feet may never abandon them. Listen, my dear child. Sita is exceedingly delicate and the pet of her father-in-law and mothers-in-law and the whole family. She has for her father Janak the jewel among princes, while her father-in-law is no other than the son of the solar race, your father. As for her lord, yourself, he is a veritable moon for the lily-like progeny of the sun god and a repository of goodness and beauty. And we will have to wait till next reading to find out what happens next.